Most people think an automation workflow is done the moment it works. The trigger fires, the workflow runs, and then everything falls apart, because this is where the real questions start showing up. Clients ask things like, who is hosting this? Is my data actually secure? Who owns the API keys? And what happens after you hand this over to me? And honestly, most tutorials never answer those questions. They stop at, look, the workflow works. But in the real world, that's not delivery, that's just a demo. Real delivery starts after the workflow works. It's about making sure the system actually runs reliably, that it's secure, that the client owns what they're paying for, and that there's no confusion once the project goes live. And this is exactly where a lot of automation projects fail. Not because the builder isn't smart, not because the tools are bad, but because no one explains what happens after the build. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the full life cycle of delivering an automation workflow, step by step, in plain language. We'll talk about where the workflow should live, how to think about security and data, who owns and pays for API usage, how to test properly, how to hand the project over professionally, and how to close things cleanly on the business side. No hype, no unnecessary technical jargon, just how automation workflows are actually delivered in the real world.
Build anything. There's one question you must answer first. Who is hosting the workflow? This single decision determines almost everything else. Your setup, your pricing, your security, and even whether you are doing things the right way legally. Now let's clear up a big misunderstanding. You are allowed to sell services using automation tools, but you are not allowed to turn the automation tool itself into your product unless you have the proper license. So everything comes down to this simple distinction. Is this workflow being used inside what business to run their internal processes, or are you exposing it as a platform that multiple people depend on? Once you understand that, hosting becomes very simple. There are three models you will see in the real world. Option one, and this is what I recommend almost every time, it's client hosting. Each client has their own instance. You build the workflow inside their setup. They own it. They pay for the hosting. You're just the builder and consultant. This keeps everything clean. You stay compliant, clients own their system, and there's no shared infrastructure risk. Think of it like the Zapier model. Every client has their own seat, and you are the expert helping them set it up. Option two is hosting for your own internal use. This is when you host automation, but it only powers your business. Lead routing, internal AI agents, reports, things the client never logs into. That's allowed because the tool is just your internal engine. Clients are paying for the outcome, not access to the system. Option 3 is hosting as a product. This is where automation is the product. You are selling access to a system or platform. At this point, you need a commercial or enterprise license. This only makes sense if you are building a SaaS. So here's the simple takeaway. Remember this and you will avoid a lot of trouble. Client work, client host. Internal operations, you host. Building a platform or SaaS, you need a paid license. Once you have decided where the workflow lives, the next responsibility is security and data protection. And this part scares a lot of people, but it really doesn't have to. Secure doesn't mean integrate systems or complicated setups. It simply means responsible with other people's data. Think about what most workflows touch. Emails, customer details, internal documents. If the data leaks even once, trust is gone. So the goal here is simple. Make sure only the right systems and right people can access the workflow. First, let's talk about credentials. API keys, password, tokens, these should never be exposed or hard-coded. They are stored securely and only unlocked when the workflow actually runs. That means even if someone looks at the workflow, they don't see raw secrets unless they are explicitly allowed to. Next is external access. Anytime a workflow is triggered from the outside, like through a webhook, you should treat that like a front door. Not everyone should be allowed to walk in. So that means encrypted connections, verification tokens, and never pulling sensitive data directly from URLs. In simple terms, only approved systems should be able to talk to your automation. Now there is also personal data. Anything that can identify a real person needs extra care. The best rule here is data minimization. Only bring in the fields you actually need. You should also know where the data flows. So if something ever needs to be deleted or updated, it's actually possible to do that. And this is where self-hosting becomes a big advantage. When workflows run inside the client's own environment, they control where the data lives, who can access it, and which tools are allowed to connect. For privacy-sensitive clients, this is huge. So the bottom line is this: your job isn't just to make the workflows work, it's to make them safe, contained, and trustworthy. This session right here can save you months of headaches if you get it right early. The golden rule is simple. Clients should always own their API keys and pay for their own usage. Here's why this matters. When clients own the keys, everything stays transparent. They can see exactly what's being used, how much it costs, and where the money is going. That means no surprise bill, no awkward conversations, and no confusion when the system scales. It also makes handover clean. If the project ends or changes, nothing is logged to you. The best setup looks like this. The client signs up for the tools themselves, enters their own billing information, generates the API key, and pastes it directly into the system. Your job is to make this easy, not to take control. A short loop walkthrough usually does the trick. And if they're still sure, a quick Zoom call clears it up. What you want to avoid is running everything under your own bidding, guessing token usage, or making up API calls blindly. That might feel easy at the moment, but it almost always creates problems later on. So remember, clients own the keys, clients pay for the usage, and you keep up relationship clean, professional, and scalable. Before you hand over anything to the client, testing is what protects your reputation. And this starts with real data. Don't test with made-up examples. Ask for real samples early. Emails, tickets, they can always anonymize it if needed. Next, define success up front. Be clear on what's acceptable and, just as important, what must never happen. Now, when you test, stop thinking like a builder and start thinking like an engineer. Assume things will go wrong. Test for bad data, missing data, duplicates, and weird edge cases you didn't plan for. Then add guardrails. If something breaks, it should fail safely. Set up error alerts, log failures, so you can see patterns instead of guessing. And with AI, keep the checks simple. Is the response relevant? Is it correct? Is the tone safe and on brand? And does it behave consistently? Good testing doesn't make you perfect. It makes you trustworthy. The final step is closing the project properly. This is where a lot of people get stopped and where problem starts later. First, confirm the scope is complete. Make sure both sides agree on the definition of done. Once the workflows are alive, tested, documented, and accepted, you send the final invoice and close the project. Now, you can decide if there's an ongoing maintenance retainer. A retainer covers things like bug fixes, small tweaks, monitoring, and keeping the system healthy over time. It does not include new features or major changes. Those are always separate projects. Next is ownership. Once the client pays, they own the system. You can still reuse generic patterns or templates, but anything specific to their business belongs to them. And to wrap everything up, decide where the workflow lives, secure the data, let clients own the API keys, test properly, deliver cleanly, and close the project professionally. Because anyone can build a demo. Professionals deliver systems businesses can trust. If you are serious about building solutions like this and you are willing to learn step by step and work on real projects, you're welcome to join our free community. Inside, we teach everything from ground up, starting from zero with practical hands-on guidance. And if you're someone who's interested in using this solution but doesn't want to dive into technical side and instead wants to move fast and scale sooner, you can also partner with us and hire our tech team to build these systems for you. Either way, the goal is the same, helping you move from ideas to real working solutions.